Has Israel actually been lost to Israeli influence? Is Damascus under the thumb now of Tel Aviv? Here's what's really happening that nobody is talking about. Or they are talking about it, but there's so much spin with so little analysis, it's hard to understand what's actually going on, let alone understand it well enough for long enough for you to form a coherent opinion about it. There's people who are upset because the Iran aligned, government in Damascus fell. There's people talking about Kurdish rights, and there's people obviously talking about the North Syrian forces that now hold the capital, but how they're working with Israel, their shady past sometimes is mentioned. All right, let's clear some stuff up. We're not going to be able to clear it all up in a single video, but let's get into it. Today I'll provide some clarifying light, hopefully. Now, when Assad's regime collapsed in December of 2024, Israel didn't waste a second. As I've been saying when covering the Israel-Iran conflict, the collapse of a government is one of the most vulnerable times for the collapsed state, when they are extremely vulnerable to outside forces. The government collapsed and Israel immediately invaded Syrian territory, seizing control of over 460 square kilometers beyond their already occupied Golan Heights and declaring the 1974 disengagement agreement they made with the Syrian government null and void. Note, Ahmed al-Shara, Abu Muhammad al-Jawlani, as you might know him, the head of the new government, the interim government, said the new government would uphold the disengagement agreement of 1974, to keep the peace on their southern border, the southern Syrian border. But alas, Israel said, how about no? Because they operate on if an agreement is beneficial for us in the moment, best believe I'm going to keep it. If it's not beneficial for us, I'm going to break it. They operate on that sort of basis. So they broke the agreement because it allows them to take more land at a very vulnerable time for the Syrian state. And so was the case here. That's why they broke the agreement. Now, no Syrian aggression towards Israel, it has to be mentioned. Doesn't matter, we need to defend ourselves in Syria. And the Israelis came in. But here's the twist. Syria's new leaders are actually reaching out to Israel for peace, right? The latest information suggests that there's daily communication between the two states now. Daily, Syria, Israel, communication between the two states to make sure that there's no pop-off confrontations between the two sides. Is this yet another what the citizens of other nations in the region, as well as the Muslim world, often refer to as the Arab betrayal? Is this another Arab betrayal? Is that what's happening here? The newly appointed governor of Damascus told the world, we have no fear towards Israel and our problem is not with Israel. That's obviously sounding a lot like the Muslim world's complaint of Arab betrayal here as well in Syria. Now, basically what they're saying is we don't want to meddle in anything that will threaten Israel's security. And they're saying that so that Israel has no justification at a state level to take more aggressive action against Syria, especially at its weak, vulnerable position as it is now. Right? This is an Israeli conquest, but it is a strategic opportunity Israel is trying to maximize, capitalize on. Israel, you see, destroyed Syria's entire military infrastructure in hundreds of airstrikes, wiping out their navy, their air force, chemical weapons stockpiles, while the new government helplessly watched because they didn't have the ability to fight back. They had just overthrown the last Syrian regime that had plunged the country into a 15-year civil war. Well, obviously there was outside forces that triggered the civil war, but there's so much to cover. Anyway, such is the price you pay for internal government overhaul. That's the price you pay as the country that's overhauling their government. While external regional powers wait like hungry wolves, you do your thing, you change up the government, you overthrow who you're going to, and they pounce in that moment of vulnerability when the borders are basically porous, not established and defended. So Syria's capital was lost to North Syrian forces, and as a result, Iran got completely cut off from its Syrian supply routes to Lebanese paramilitary. That's the perspective. I say lost because that's the perspective from the government side. But Syria isn't becoming an Israeli puppet state, and here's why. Turkey has emerged as the real power behind the Damascus government that's currently in place. It's the North Syrian forces that for over a decade were supported by the Turks that came down and took Damascus. It's those forces now in government relying heavily on Turkey to support them. The reality is, this is the overall reality you might not hear in many places. This is the reality you might not hear in many places. Syria has moved from three fragmented or balkanized sub-states, one Iran-aligned in the south with the capital, one Kurdish US-backed in the northeast, US-backed because the oil is there, lol, it's not even, I'm not even making that up, and one Turkish-aligned North Syria in the north, right? It's gone from three broken states and a frozen, failed economy. It's gone from that to unification and full alignment with Turkey. From the government, the centralized government is now fully aligned with Turkey, while they're also having to make concessions to Israel in the south. Iran lost its influence and Israel gained some in Syria. But here's the deeper analysis missing from many who have a knee-jerk reaction whenever they hear anything to do with state cooperation with Israel. Syria, from the citizen level to the government level now, is unified fully, and although the citizens do not want cooperation of their state with Israel, they will bear it if it allows Syria to get back up and restart its economy. The Abraham Accords, for example, which, as of just yesterday, the Abraham Accords, there's talk that Syria will join and normalize ties with Israel. The Abraham Accords are just another example of that deemed necessary cooperation. It doesn't show that at the state level they genuinely want to work with Israel. It shows that they feel geopolitically it's necessary to ensure the stability and the survival of the new state. The long-term strategy in Syria may be to rebuild, refit, gain that international recognition, gain that legitimacy, acquire those allies, and when the time comes, when the Turkish state, for example, whose rhetoric is decidedly anti-Israel, but that Turkish state becomes a state whose actions are anti-Israel to back up their rhetoric. We are likely a few years away from that, but when that does happen, Syria will remain Turkish aligned, and their rhetoric might start changing because they'll be strong enough, stable enough, and closely working with enough other countries so that Israel can't just invade them. Until that time, they have to keep their nose clean, as it were, keep their head down. At that time, they'll be likely to exercise the will of the Syrian people with regards to Israel. At that time, not now. For now, it lies low and makes concessions to keep its aggressive, highly militaristic and citizenry level hated regional neighbor in check. They have to keep them controlled. Like Jordan, Syria must do what it can to survive till the most opportune moment comes to act. At that moment, a lot is likely to happen in a very short period of time. And Ahmed al-Sharra, whose call sign Abu Muhammad al-Jolani is named after the Golan Heights, he might decide it's time to take back these Golan Heights that belong to sovereign Syria in due time, not a moment earlier though. Because barking without being able to bite is a fast way to get mauled by an aggressive neighbor who can, right now, bite. In conclusion, Syria needs time, and geopolitically, it's doing whatever it needs to buy that time and build up. An interesting point I should also mention here. Saudi Arabia is considering normalization ties with Israel. That is a completely different kettle of fish. Saudi Arabia is not in a position where it needs to be doing that. It, at a state level, wants to do that because it prioritizes economic benefit with ties to Israel over aligning the government actions with the citizenry of Saudi Arabia, which is that we absolutely want nothing to do with Israel unless it's as a belligerent adversary, right? So Saudi Arabia is rich enough to be able to oppose Israel at a state level, but they're choosing not to because the state level, the current government, right, the current monarchy feels that it would rather work with Israel than not. That's a very, very different dynamic, right? I'm not taking sides publicly, but that's a very different dynamic to Syria, where Syria feels, okay, we do not want to work with that state, but we will because we must. Very different. And Turkey is in the middle. The rhetoric from Turkey, from Recep Tayyip Erdogan, is sharp, and many see that as two-faced. Your rhetoric is sharp, but your actions are not. But we have to understand, sharp rhetoric that agrees with the citizenry prepares the state to take action. It's just that they have not felt that action is warranted at this moment. But at the right time, the actions might snap into line with the rhetoric, and then you'll see some movement. I've run out of time.